Good morning, Gila. Welcome to the Tiny Interview Network. I'm so happy you're here.
I'm very happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course, we are here today to talk about your book, which you will see I have tagged up quite a bit because I loved it so much. It's called Nearly Departed: Adventures in Loss, Cancer, and Other Inconveniences. So thanks for being here and writing it. I'm really excited to talk about it.
And I'd like to just note, if anybody's actually watching this, that you have tabbed it with color coordinated sticky notes, which I appreciate. And don't know if you do for every book, but if you do, wow, that's next level. So,
You
wow.
know, I normally don't. These were literally the ones that my child threw near me when I said, "Hey, can you hand me some sticky notes?" And he tossed them over and I gave him a dirty look. So that was the story behind that. But now you've given me a way to level up. So I will be, you should see my desktop. I actually downloaded custom little folders because you can make them different colors instead of just the blue. Yeah, it's a real
Oh,
rabbit hole. I have a problem.
yeah, I don't want that problem, so I'm going to pretend you didn't say that. Okay.
Don't worry, I'll do it for you, sweetie. It's fine.
No, no.
I'm an enabler. It's great. Okay,
Okay,
well,
fine.
let's
I
start.
accept your acceptance.
I accept. This friendship should be. Let's start with the book and just the process of writing it and what that was like for you. So give me kind of the elevator pitch and then how did it come to be for you?
Yeah, so the process of writing it in a word was, well, two words is really hard. How did it, well, you write, you have a book, so you
Yeah.
know, I don't have to tell you, especially when it's, memoir, lots of mental, emotional, and even physical feelings coming up. But I like to tell the story of the exact moment that I knew I was going to write this book. This is my debut memoir, and I am a freelance writer. I write humor pieces, satire pieces, personal essay, but that was all a build up to writing this book. The book was always the goal. So creative writing was my favorite subject, even in elementary school. That's always been my thing, but I didn't do anything with it. It never occurred to me to write a book until something book worthy happened. And the TLDR, as they say, is that my mom died of breast cancer at 42. Her mom died of breast cancer at 49. My dad died of colon cancer at 55. And so by the time I was 30, I was the oldest living member of my family. And I know none of this sounds funny, but I promise you the book's funny,
The book
right?
is funny. Yes, I can testify to that. It is.
Julie's, yeah, I'm not prompting her. She legit thinks it's
I
humorous.
do.
Because that's how I cope. But I, of course, became very hypervigilant about my own breast health, about prevention in general. And, for a decade between 20 and 30, I did whatever was available to me in terms of self-exams, seeing doctors regularly, finding out what could contribute to risk, what could reduce my risk. And then eventually, when I found genetic testing was available, I did that. Anytime I learned of a new procedure or intervention, I jumped on it without question, obviously with medical advisement, but I was like, give me that. And then it was when I heard about the idea of a preventative double mastectomy, which everyone now knows what that is because of Angelina Jolie. But
Right.
actually, yeah, like if you say the surgery Angelina had, everyone knows. But I'm like, well, guess what? I did it 5 years before her. So she
So
stole my idea and she ran with it and stole my thunder, but it's fine because she's saving lives.
she
But
is. We like to keep an eye on the greater goal here, but I can take a moment for the mild bitterness of it. Continue. Yes.
she has a
Also,
slightly
the phone that's ringing
larger,
is, sorry.
that's life. That's
Yeah,
life, man.
it
My
really is.
doorbell might ring.
And that home phone, literally no one calls except telemarketers. So continue, please.
Obviously. Do you want
Yeah,
to, maybe it's something good. You could answer it and we could decide together if we're going to like subscribe to whatever you're selling.
totally. You're a Nigerian prince and you need money. Okay, we'll help.
Probably Angelina going like, I heard you guys talking about me. Could you stop?
Oh,
Anyway, so I was doing this at a time when it wasn't really on anyone's radar, so it was all quite drastic and quite trailblazing. But for me, it was essential. And so at 34, having already tested positive for the BRCA gene, which gave me an 87% chance of getting breast cancer. But hey, my mom and grandma died of it in their 40s, so like that was not much of a revelation. I
right.
had a preventative mastectomy. And in that surgery, where I thought I was removing the danger by removing my breast tissue, my surgeons unexpectedly found two early but aggressive tumors growing in one breast. And the reason I have to have this whole run up to the story of why I decided to write this book, because at this point, I still haven't decided to write the book.
Of
It's the
course.
moment at which I found myself sitting in an oncologist's office, which I never thought I'd have, which I'd undergone all these things in order to avoid. Now I'm like, wait, why do I have an oncologist and why is she telling me I need preventative chemo? Um, and there's a story, and I won't ruin it in the book, but there's a funny story about a question that my husband asks and my doctor's answer, which she said in full sincerity, but my brain warped it into something really funny and inappropriate. That was the exact moment where I was like, this is so absurd. I will need to write a book about this, both as a way of processing what's happened.
Yes.
By all of this, I don't mean just my diagnosis, despite my prevention. I mean going all the way back to my mom. So that
Yes.
was the moment where I'm like, I don't know when, I don't know how, I know zero about writing a book, but I'm going to write a book about this. That was 15 years ago.
Wow. And then that's so many things in that story and in your book that stood out to me. The first is, like you said, this was pre Angelina Jolie, and we say that in that way, but also that it just, I think for people who have lost someone to cancer, correct me if this hasn't been your experience, but there can be equal parts fear of it happening and also fear of knowing it's happening. So sometimes preventative measures can be challenging because you feel like, what am I going to find? What's going to happen here? So, I mean, your bravery was so tremendous, and so much of it too, that you were the oldest member of your household at such a young age, and the loss of your mom. Your youngest sibling's 13 years younger than you are, correct?
No, she was 13 when my dad died. She is 17 years younger than
17.
me.
Oh, okay. Because you were 20 when you were going to Israel.
Yeah. Like I
Okay.
drove my mom to the hospital to have her because of something that happened to my dad. That's going in my next book. Stay tuned. But
Ooh,
like I'm the oldest of five kids, and we were born to the same parents in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. I
that's
know.
amazing. My sister's 10 years younger than me, and occasionally we'll have generation gap moments where I'm like, you don't know this, do you? And she's like, yeah, I don't. You're
That's
old.
what Google's for.
Exactly.
But it feels like a lot, 10 years.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
But I think the thing also that you're hitting on that stood out for me in the book, the scene that you write in the grocery store where or the idea of someone rolling into you in the grocery store and, how are you doing? And this idea that we're constantly navigating these existentially powerful and sometimes awful things right next to the mundane. So here I am in the grocery store and, oh, this is what I'm going through. So I just was you did such a good job of capturing that, and hearing you describe the book, that's so much of it where it's like, this is ridiculous. This should not be happening.
Yeah. It's like, and now what? Then
Yes.
what? You've got to be kidding me. But listen, nobody buys memoirs about your happy childhood that blossomed into a happy adulthood, right? No one's buying that. Not an agent, not a publisher, not a reader. It's like beyond gone. So you
I
got to
have
have some trauma in there.
You gotta have there's gotta be a little rub. I agree. There was actually when I decided to stop reading reviews after my memoir came out, one was
Oh,
like, who is this woman? Her family seemed so supportive. And I mean, she was just not happy apparently it wasn't enough for her. And I was like, okay, so we're going to be done with this.
yeah.
And we always knew it was a bad idea, but it's true. I mean, we always
No,
write
I got a
about
one
that.
star review on Goodreads with no review. It's like 1 star. And I'm like, all right. Maybe her finger slipped and she forgot the other 4 stars, but you
We'll
don't
give
seem to
her,
have a specific reason. I don't know. I think
it's,
reviews, that's a whole separate podcast, but reviews to me are, and I say this as somebody whose entire last chapter of the book, that the epilogue is a list of me reviewing life's experiences. But
yes,
that's me reviewing my own stuff. I think that
yes.
hearing what other people think and the power that they wield and being able to tell others what they think is maybe not the best thing.
It's not.
Right.
Courtney Mom wrote about that in her book, Before and After the Book Deal. She's like,
Yep.
you have a garlic press. Who gets on and is like, gosh, I love this garlic press. I'm going to get on and talk about it. And there's a subset of people who enjoy that. But yeah, the whole review thing, yes, we'll put a pin in that. You and I can have a conversation about
Put
the
a pin
fun
in
of
it.
that.
Yep.
Yes, yes. What did you find the experience of writing was for you?
Really draining.
Mm,
One of my, well, really my one of my favorite writers, actresses, people in the world is Tina Fey. I have many fantasies of meeting her, as is the rest of the world. It's so not original, except that my entire life I've been told at various points that I look like her, I sound like her. I'm in London right now, and because of my American accent and I guess my snarky ways, people are like, who you look like. I'm like, yes, I do. It's Tina Fey. Either
Yes.
arrange a
Do you
meeting
have her
or I
number?
don't. Yeah. What's her WhatsApp? So she said on a podcast something that really stuck with me about her book, Bossy Pants. And she's only written one book, which is surprising because she's such a prolific creator. She spoke about how much she hated the process of writing the book. She said, I loved having written the book, but I hated writing the book. And this was before I even started writing a book. And I think about that a lot because that's how I felt about it. I felt just physically very, I could never find a comfortable spot in writing. And I moved from my laptop to my, desktop, and it didn't feel good like that. There was a lot of, deep research. It's weird to research yourself, but I had to speak about people who'd been through some things with me, right? And get their input. And how do you remember this? And does it match with how I remember it? And what details can you offer? That part I liked. I liked the research part. It also connected me with some people that I hadn't spoken to in a long time. And the emotional part, I get asked this question a lot about what it's like emotionally to write a book about such emotional things. Honestly, I feel like by the time I was ready to write it, I processed a lot of that.
Yes.
You're smiling and nodding because you're probably agreeing.
Yes.
It doesn't mean that feelings don't come up, but they're fleeting. It's like, oh, that was really sad, actually. Anyway, tappity tap, tap, tap.
Yes, you're focused on the crafting of it. So there is a side of, yes, it's sad and emotional, but it doesn't bring it up in that same way, maybe for someone reading, because like you said, it's kind of hard work. So you're working on, I guess the technical side of it would be part of the way to say it. I'm not sure if that makes sense to you.
The storytelling side of it. Like
Yes.
I'm getting, thank God, a lot of really strong reader response from, friends, family, people who don't know me, people who know me, people I haven't seen in 30 years,
Yeah.
random people, all, with the same theme of, what a great book. I laughed, I cried. You made me cry on the beach. A lot of people are reading this on the beach. It should come with a warning, like read on beach at your own. Actually, the blurb from Elijah Schlesinger on the cover says, only read this if you're comfortable laughing and crying in public. So the warning's right there. It's on the cover.
I mean, if people are reading it on the beach, then good for them.
That's on them. I've put my disclaimer, but I think that they're experiencing it for the first time, so they're processing these things in a much more emotional way than I am. And sometimes I feel bad about it. It's like, oh, maybe I should pretend to feel a bit more. Did you get that?
Yes.
Right.
It's so funny you're saying that, because I was explaining to my husband at some point, I was like, this is old news for me, what they're reading. It is new news to them. So they are reading it in the now where it's very much past. And so that idea of, the freshness of it and thinking, oh, wow, your experience of this it's just such a strange thing.
It is.
I don't
like,
think,
I'm so sorry your mom died. I'm like, it was 30 years ago and I am good. Totally. It's like when I see comedians on stage really doing funny bits, I'm like, how are you not dying of laughter? And it's because they've practiced it so many times. It doesn't even register as funny anymore.
Yes.
Important to the delivery.
Yes. That makes total sense.
We're only able to tell our true stories because this is not a therapy session. We're not working it out in real time.
Yes. That would be bad. I don't think that would make for great writing.
But it would make for a great news story.
Yeah, it would. I would enjoy that. I actually have a friend who just started going to a new therapist, and I am just on her all the time. It's horrible. I'm like, so do you want to tell me what you talked about? I just have this weird, have you watched Couples Therapy?
Yes.
Yeah, it's that same thing where I can only watch so much of that show because then I get a little crazy, but then it's just this window into people's lives. Anyway,
we all have voyeuristic tendencies. Why are we like that? We're just like that. Is that why you do these tiny interviews? You just want to get information from people? I'm joking.
Yes, actually, and you should see the valuable information. I'm just storing it all. No, but I do love what happened for me is that early on I never knew that authors talked about their books. I've been a lifelong reader, and I had never seen press, never had gone to an author event. And then once I went to one, I was like, this is so cool, especially for a memoir, to see behind and get a sense of what the person does to make this happen. I just find it endlessly fascinating. So I just like finding out who people are. I'm curious, I think.
And also, you know, what's interesting? Finding out what didn't make it into the book, like what got cut. Because you probably have entire files of things. I have a file on a folder on my desktop called Little Darlings, you know, from
Oh,
the
yes.
phrase kill your little darlings, which writers listening to this will understand. It's the pain you feel when you have to cut out words, especially large swaths of words that you love so much and are so precious to you, but your editor and ultimately you understand that it doesn't move your story forward the way it should, but like, what's in there? Let's have a peek.
Yes. Oh, that's exciting. Well, when I organize your laptop files and make them color coded, I'll just like take a little peek in
Please,
there.
little
Yeah.
darlings.
Yeah,
Will
little
do.
darlings. It'll be great. Here's a question for you. Speaking of books and what makes in it, but in your book, what you talked about with the Jewish way in death and mourning, I was so interested in that book. But I think what stood out to me in the beginning of the book too was that I think the Jewish way, our culture's so bad at talking about death and those rituals around it that might actually be very comforting. What do you think is one of your, like if you had a favorite thing or something that really worked for you or landed with you that is a Jewish tradition around death?
So, I think a lot of it, as explained in the, you know, for those who aren't familiar with Jewish mourning rituals, essentially when someone loses an immediate family member, parent or child, there are specific rules around the funeral itself and also around the moment between the loss of the loved one and the funeral. You enter this sort of what's the word, like an in between stage where you can't do any what are called mitzvot, like commandments and good deeds and the things that like bring Jewish life to life. You're suddenly not allowed to do, and that, you know, because your focus supposed to entirely be on preparing for the funeral of your loved one. So I think that's a really, well, I'm going to opposite answer your question.
Okay.
I think that's the hardest time because you're in this suspended state of like, what am I? I'm
Yes.
focused entirely on the loss of my mom or my dad, but I can't do the things that bring me comfort, like making a blessing on food or a blessing on anything else or praying in the way we, you know, would normally do on a daily basis. I'm not so good with the prayers, but when I do, suddenly when you can't do something, you're like, oh, all I want to do is pray right now. Um,
Absolutely.
but immediately after the funeral, there's a 7-day mourning period called Shiva. The word Shiva is Hebrew for seven. And I think, having just gone to a Shiva last week, my brother-in-law lost his dad, and it's amazing when you see other people sitting Shiva, and I had the same experience, is you really come to understand how comforting and soothing that is. Um, the idea of Shiva is that you're not allowed to leave the house and you kind of just have to sit there receiving guests, but you don't serve them. There's someone else running the show, bringing you food and making sure you take breaks and answering the door, answering the phone. And your whole job is to just sit and be comforted by others, right? So being comforted can mean anything. You know, as you saw in the book, for me, being comforted was laughing with my friends, which I got
Yeah.
yelled at for. I'm like, I'm the one sitting Shiva. I'm going to do what I want. It's not going to bring my mom back if I don't laugh. But I think that my brother-in-law was sitting Shiva for the first time. And it was amazing to see him and his adult siblings and his 80-year-old mom understand that the beauty of Shiva is that it's this constant flow of people. You don't have time to feel too much emotion. Like obviously you're sad and you're swapping stories and you're hearing stories about your departed loved one for the first time that make you see them in a different way, which is incredible. But it's almost like when the body sustains an injury, the brain sends is it oxytocin?
Oxytocin. Hmm.
Yeah, like a pain blocker. So Shiva is like an actual pain blocker for that first week. It's like this is when you're most raw, most tender. We're going to protect you by sending a literal constant stream of friends. And people for Shiva come out of the woodwork. People you haven't seen in 30 years will show up because it's a mitzvah, it's a good deed, but it's something that you can especially do for this person, and you really only get one or two shots at it. And so that to me is the most comforting part. I think it's a beautiful thing where you're not allowed to get back right back into life. You have to wait at least 7 days. You can't go to work. And it's not about keeping joy out. It's really just about a state of, constantly being in motion.
Yes.
You don't have time to wallow and to mire, while at the same time you are still honoring and remembering fondly the person that you lost.
I love hearing you describe that. I loved reading about it because it does feel like such an honoring and a reverence of that person that is no longer there. And it loops back around to what we were talking about earlier with sort of this having to go to the grocery store and do normal things, like your whole world hasn't just changed. And so it seems like it gives you a little insulation for that transition from that normal to a new normal and holding that person. Yeah.
Like why it would, you see this sometimes in movies and you read about it in books where people are like, this terrible thing just happened and here I am filling out my tax forms. Like, they don't make sense. One is so humdrum and mundane, the other is so big, and it's hard to reconcile those two worlds. So yes, exactly as you said, Shiva puts a separation between those two worlds. You are not at all concerned with the mundane. You have, hopefully, and our community tends to be very supportive, very close knit. We do anything for each other. When I say community, I don't just mean like people who live near each other. The broader Jewish community is that's our way. It's like, what can I do to help you? Let me know.
Yeah.
What do you want? And they hopefully take over a lot of these everyday mundane things. So you can focus. You only have those 7 days, and once they're done, it really is kind of easing back into life. So use them well, use them wisely.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful tradition, but the idea that, that the Jewish culture and faith has those wonderful pieces built in so that there is this sort of opportunity for your community to show up for you, which is, I think, the worst part of grief is feeling alone in it. And so then to have that is such a gift.
Yeah, that's another good word. It's the alone, like, you're, I don't know, calling the cable company to ask about why something isn't working. You're thinking, doesn't this person know what loss I've just sustained? And you just want to tell them. And even if you told them, would they care? Would they help you any more, any faster?
Yes.
It's hard. Grief is hard. That's why they changed the DSM to make, this prolonged grief disorder. There are people they're realizing that people aren't like, well, that concludes my grief period. I will now stop grieving and be regular again.
Right. And to talk about your McSweeney's piece, it would basically be like Tiffany's would make a grief ring, because you'd be like, oh, right, I forgot that just like the cancer ring. I was laughing. I will be sharing that piece because that was hilarious. Let's end to say you are such a funny writer. You do such a good job of capturing just the ends of the spectrum. I love the way that you finish with such honor for your mom too, for doing the best that she could in that time, and just all of these pieces that it's brought up for you. And also I think we should end, because it is August 1st, with Feel It on the 1st.
Can I do it? Can I feel it on the 1st?
Do it. Yes.
Can I show you?
Yes. Please do.
This is how we feel it on the 1st. Okay.
Right here.
Yeah.
Yep.
Feel it on the 1st, which means every 1st of the month I post a funny tongue-in-cheek photo of me holding up something relevant, spherical, boob-like. Today I announced that my audiobook is coming out, so I put 2 circle pictures of the audio narrated by me, images over my chest, to remind people to do a self-exam, talk to the doctor about what screenings they're due, and know your risk profile, which means, what's your exposure to breast cancer, and proceed accordingly. Just keep breast cancer top of mind. I can keep breast cancer top of mind, but what I want people to do is, ratchet up the amount of time they spend thinking about it by some percent, because that will save lives.
Yes, it will.
Happy Feel It on the 1st.
Feel it on the 1st. I'm so glad. Perfect timing. The book is Nearly Departed. I can't wait for people to continue picking it up. And after talking to you, I cannot wait for your audiobook to come out. It comes out on August 13th, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, after hearing your voice, it's going to be so good. So
I love your voice too. Can I just say
thank
you have
you.
a great video, podcaster, radio interview voice. Like it's so soothing.
Oh, thank you. I'm very glad. I'm going to tell my children that when I'm yelling at them later.
Okay. Here's
Yeah.
Gila's number. Wanted to take it up with her. She thinks I'm pretty great.
Thanks so much for the time today. Thanks for writing the book. Thanks for being who you are in the world. I'm so glad to know you.
Thank you. It was great to meet you. And I will see you more on Instagram because I absolutely love what you're putting out there.
Well, thank you. Yes,
That's
see
your
you
tiny
soon,
microphone.
friend. Oh, yes, my tiny microphone. I know, the summer has really thrown me off, but we will get back after it.
Bring it
All
back
right.
to tiny.
I
Thank
will.
you so, so much.